Soy Eddy Warman y estamos de regreso siempre en 88.9 y ahora probando cosa que es muy extraña y muy difícil, un Sauternes. Es un vino de uva botrytisada. La uva botrytisada es una uva que tiene un hongo muy bueno, así como tenemos en el elote el huitlacoche. La uva tiene un hongo muy bueno que la hace envejecer, que la hace crecer en dulzura, pero no le hace crecer en azúcar extremo. Es decir, no va a competir la acidez con el azúcar y le permite tener un vino muy bueno, que inclusive se dan los vinos de postre. No hay que confundir, y eso nos lo va a explicar David, no hay que confundir con un vino de postre, que suelen ser más dulces. Y I was trying to make an easy explanation of the difference between Sauternes, a dessert wine, and an ice wine, which is a lot of difference. But it's not very often to find somebody who comes with Sauternes wine and make a very good explanation as the way you did in our lunch. So I want David to talk about Chateau Guiraud, as well other one with the classification of 1855, Napoleon classification. It's in the south of the Bordeaux. It's in Sauternes. But let's talk about what we find there. If we go to Sauternes, what kind of land, what kind of view do we have, and what happens there?
Alors, first, it's not that far from Bordeaux. We say that the southern tip of the Bordeaux vineyards of the Bordeaux wine producing region, but it's something like, maximum 1 hour drive from the center of Bordeaux, 50 kilometers away. So it's not that far, but it's very, very specific. You have two valleys. You have the Garonne valleys. The Garonne River is the main river, that cuts the old Bordeaux vineyard in two sides, the left bank and the right bank. And Sauternes is actually on the southern tip of the left bank. Voilà. So roughly, if you look at the map, it's bottom left. And you also have another valley, the valley of the Ciron River, a tiny river, a tiny cold water river. Cold water because there is no proper source for the Ciron. It's the water, that gathers after percolation in the soil, and all this water, comes from the land forest. The land forest, forest of the land in French, that's all the mainly pine trees that are growing on the south of the Bordeaux region. It's one of the major forests in France, and this forest will collect all the rain, all the rainfall, but also will keep all the humidity. Will get some of the humidity coming from the Atlantic Ocean, because we have the big current, the Gulf Stream, that is pushing, maritime influence in the lands, and actually some of the humidity, is taken, is cooked by the trees, and then the water goes in the soil, and then in the soil, it's percolation, like for coffee, it goes in the soil, and then it gathers in very tiny river, small river, and then at the end you have the Ciron, but the Ciron is never wider than something like 10 meters. So it's very small. If you look at the landscape, you see that the Ciron Valley, the Ciron River, has been working deeply the land for a very long time, because you see that the valley is very wide. So there's a very, very long influence of the Ciron in the area. And when the Ciron forms the river, it's always in the shade of trees. So it never really warms up with the sun. Contrary to the Garonne Valley, that is completely open, much wider, and so get the sunbeams, since Toulouse and then Marmande and up to Bordeaux. So a big difference gap, a big temperature difference between the Ciron and the Garonne River, and then when you have on top of these two temperature differences of the air between the nighttime and the daytime temperature, at that moment you have lots of fog. Voilà. So you need to be quite careful when you drive, especially in the evening and in the morning. But the morning fog we have in Sauternes are absolutely magic. So when you arrive in Sauternes, some people are just amazed by the light you may have. So once the fog has gone, you have wonderful light. It's still quite, well, I'd say it's still quite preserved. I don't want to say wild because it's cultivated, but I would say that you have really a sort of genuine authenticity in the area. Small villages. There is no big town, well, except Langon, which is a big town, but it's a bit aside of the vineyards. It's really a lovely place, really to be rediscovered, because lots of people going to Bordeaux, they think red,
Right.
so they will go to Pauillac. Some generally people are a bit disappointing by the village itself of Pauillac, but after the properties are always amazing. But then you have Saint-Emilion, which is absolutely gorgeous, very successful and with lots of people visiting the village. But then when people come to Sauternes, they feel relaxed, they feel at ease, and they have a first perception of the magic that reigns in the area.
How about the land? It's Arcy, it's grave.
Alors, sorry.
Yeah.
Soil. At Chateau Guiraud, we have that's quite wide property because we have more than 100 hectares. Mm-hmm. So that brings a diversity of type of soil. We have some gravels. We have some sandy gravel with a bit more sand in the earth. Then we have some soil that are richer in chalk. But we have under Guiraud, we have a thick layer of clay. And sometimes you can see on the ground, or you just have to dig a little bit, and you see some clay that are blue darker than this. Voilà. Blue clay. Mm-hmm. And they act like a sponge. So, the gravel soil or sandy soil, is very drainant. So the water doesn't stay on the surface; it goes very deep, and it's absorbed by the clay. And once the clay is saturated, the water, it becomes, let's say, waterproof, and so the water goes along, the layer of clay, and after it gets up. This is why you have lots of sources around the chateau. You have some in Dicam at La Tour Blanche, you have one at Guiraud, and so on. That's the water, that is going up, because the clay layer is saturated. This is excellent for wine producing.
And how is the production of Sauternes? What's the process?
Alors, the process is very specific. This is why Sauternes is a name that sounds very specific and sounds quite magic to many people. When you say Sauternes, wherever in the world, most people will tell you that, Sauternes, I know that's sweet wines, and they have heard about something about a rot, a form of rot. This form of rot, that's the noble rot. Well, we call that noble rot, which is for red wine producers, it's a disaster. It's not a good sign. The thing is, Sauternes, the conditions, and especially with the morning fog and the morning mist I was speaking about earlier on, the conditions are absolutely exceptional for the development of that specific rot. The noble rot, that's botrytis. The real name is Botrytis cinerea. This botrytis has two effects. Generally, people only think about the first one, being that as the fungus develops, just under the skin of the berry, it will make the skin very thin enough to let the water get out. So you have some berries, that are shriveling on the vine. So that's one part of the real process. Lots of people just think about this one. But the other thing, which makes really these wines, which give to these wines, a very unique expression, that's the synthesis of aroma that will happen inside the berry. The plant will react towards the presence of botrytis. And so there will be some aromas that will be developed in the berry while they were unperceptible before. You cannot taste them before the development of the botrytis. After the development of the botrytis, you can really feel them.
Eddy Warman siempre 88.9.